Hey guys, welcome back to Patriot Corner. My name is Remington, and today we're going to be talking about AKs. Primarily the function and mechanics of how an AK works, the operation aspect. So before we get into that, why don't you hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget about the notification bell. That way you can see upcoming videos when I post them. Alright guys, so let's get into it. So let's do a little background before we really dive into this. AK platforms like the AK-47 and the AK-74 really have not gained a lot of traction in the United States with popularity until the last 15-20 years really. So because it's started to gain traction and people are really starting to buy them, I decided to do a video on them to give you kind of some aspects and some pointers on how to use your AK properly and all the different bells and whistles that might come on one. So let's start off with, the AK was born from Russia and was, is originally considered what you would call the Kalashnikov, and the Kalashnikov 47. Because basically it took them 47 tries to get it right. But once they did get it right, it is a hellacious firearm. I mean, so much so that actually most of the world has adopted this rifle as their primary firearm for their armed forces. Now, of course, the United States has not. We are using like the M4, M16 variant, kind of like the AR-15 with AR-10, which would be for your civilian use. So let's get into it a little bit. The AK-47, it shoots a 7.62 by 39 caliber round. So that's going to look like this guy right here. And it's kind of the Russian variant of R308, or the 7.62 by 51, which is this guy right here. So now there's another one where another version of the AK, which is called the AK-74. Now the AK-74 is not a very popular gun in the United States even as now, but there is a lot of aspect of confusion when it comes to the AK-47 and the AK-74. A lot of people believe that the AK-74 is the pistol version of the AK-47. That is not true. The AK-47 actually comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes, whether it's a pistol all the way up to a rifle, or an SBR. Short-barreled rifle is what that would stand for. Now, the AK-74 has actually all the same formats. They actually could look relatively similar. The difference really between them is caliber. The AK-74 shoots the 5.45 by 39, which is this guy right here. Now, that is kind of their equivalent, the Russian equivalent, to our 5.56 by 45, or the 2.23. What our AR-15s, M4 carbines, and the M16 all use. So those are your differences right there, and I wanted to get that touched up before we really dive into the nuts and bolts of the actual firearm. Now, just to clarify, I do want to note that there are other types of manufacturing of firearms that are very similar, that use the platform of an AK-47 or an AK, like that of the Israeli Galil. That does shoot, it does use the platform of your AK-47, but instead of shooting a 7.62 by 39 or a 5.45 by 39, it shoots the 5.45 or the 5.56 by 54, which is your AR round. Now, there are other variants, and like I said previously in my last video with AR function, is they do make hybrid ARs between the AR-15 and the AK-47. Now, Those hybrids are usually more fitted towards the platform of the AR than they are for the platform of the AK. Usually they use more like the same magazine and the same caliber, and that's about it when it comes to the combination. But that is something to note. There are other firearms out there that are not strictly AK-47s and AK-74s, and there are AK-47s and AK-74s that do shoot other calibers besides the two I just named. But your primary calibers of your AK-47 and AK-74 are the 7.62 by 39 and the 5.45 by 39. Okay, just so we have that noted, and now we can dive in. All right, so this right here is your AK-47. Now, I want to note at the beginning that all AKs, whether that's the 47 or the 74, are semi-automatic rifles. Now, of course, if you get into military grade, you can get into selector switches where they become fully automatic or triple round burst. But on the civilian side, you can't do that, so they are all semi-automatic rifles. Now, what a semi-automatic rifle means is that the magazine feeds rounds into the chamber, the bolt pulls that round from the magazine and stuffs it into the actual chamber and seats it in there so it can be fired. Now this happens in a split of a second, and continuously happens as fast as you can pull the trigger until your magazine is empty. So now going from there, you're going to note that the AK magazine is a little different than what you would look at as like a AR-15 magazine or anything. It's a lot curved, a lot more curved. And the reason for this is actually where the term banana clip came from. But the reason why this is the way it is because the 7.62 by 39, because it's short and fat, really kind of has a problem feeding. So because of that, they have to line them up in a perfect half moon like this. That way they feed clear through. And that's why you get this very exaggerated curve motion instead of more of a straight deal like an AR-15 would be. So now first off, to remove your magazine, you have a lever right here. You push this away from your trigger and you cork your mag towards the muzzle and you remove your mag. Now, of course, to insert it, it would be the exact opposite, but you don't need to mess with your lever. You put it in on your kind of angle right there and let it click in. Simple. Now, they don't drop straight out like an AR-15 magazine would. You do have to move that lever aspect. So now, of course, when we get into this removable magazine, of course, you fill this up with ammo, and there's a spring inside of this, and that spring then is what keeps your tensile strength to keep pushing your ammunition into the action so it can continuously fire. Now, what I have noticed about AK magazines, so pretty easy, it's just like every other magazine to load. You push straight in and now it's loaded, and you just continuously do that until it's basically stops you from doing it. But what I have noticed with AK mags is they do, especially if they are new AK mags, they do get pretty tough to load, especially once you get to this area around here. Now that I do know that they do loosen up after you shoot them and load them, shoot them, load them, shoot them, load them several times. They do loosen up. It gets a lot easier. It also can get a little tough depending on the type of AK you own to actually get your magazine seated into your firearm. Again, that usually does loosen up over time, where they get much easier depending on how often you use your magazine to insert it into your firearm. Now, I'm going to take this time real quick to let you know that I do not recommend ever keeping your magazines fully loaded, especially for extended periods of time, like months. You can wear out the spring tension inside your magazines, and if you do that, they might not feed properly, and you could get jams or non-feeds, and nobody really wants that. So I do recommend, if you're going to keep some loaded for a defensive purpose, that every few weeks you unload them and load up a different magazine and replace them to keep your tensile strength on your magazine in top shape. Or another way is just to load them halfway, so you're not totally compressing that internal spring, so you don't weaken it. Now, there are a lot of different manufacturers of AK magazines, especially for the AK-47. You know, you have there's several different types of Russians, where there's plastic, polymer, steel, a lot of different types in Russia. There are also your Chinese, your Korean, your Bulgarian, your Romanian, even American-made mags. A lot of different manufacturers of mags, and you're just going to have to kind of play with what you like to use, whether they're steel, polymer, plastic, and really what your AK likes to use. All AKs are kind of a little different, but they are usually, they can take most magazines, but you got to play with it a little bit. There's also a variety of capacity for your magazine, you know, whether they range from 5 all the way up to your standard, you know, 30 round clip, all the way up to a 100 round drum magazine. So do kind of play with it. And like, I do want to mention that a lot of states do have capacity regulations, you know, whether you can't buy them or you can't even own them. Do be mindful of that and figure out what your state's law is. That way you can go and stay legal on what kind of magazines you're going to be able to use. Okay, so moving right along here, you got your AK, you got your mag inserted. Next thing to do is you want to know how to charge your firearm or cock it. You have obviously your charging handle right here. You pull that straight back, let it straight go, and now you are cocked. That pulled your round from your magazine into your chamber, and now you're ready to go until this is empty. Now, if you do notice, this is a empty magazine and it is inserted. There is no last round bolt hold open for an AK. So be mindful of that. Now, what I mean by last round bolt hold open is when a magazine ends, your bolt will stay back, letting you know that the magazine is empty and you can replace a new one. And therefore, once you do that, you can then usually hit some kind of a lever and it releases and you can go on without actually having to charge again. AKs are not like that. Not like an AR-15. If you have an AR-15 and you've seen my previous video on AR-15 operations, AKs are different. Every time you put a magazine in, you have to charge that and then get back to firing. Every time. There is no bolt hold open. Now that does take me back to the safety here. Safety is on the right hand side of your firearm, and it's this lever right here. Now on an AR, you cannot put your safety on if your gun is not cocked. Now on an AK, you can do that. So if you fire your gun and the firearm is not cocked, you can now put it on safety. Now, something to note about this though is when the AK is on safety, you cannot cock your gun now without taking it off of safety. The safety itself actually blocks the charging lever from coming all the way back. So you have to take it off of safety so you can charge it fully, and then you can put it back onto safety. That's pretty much how the safety works. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy, but those are two little notes that kind of can be tricky and they're good to know. All right, moving forward, this up here on the top, this is your gas blowback. And so what that is when you fire and your bullet goes through the barrel, the gas comes back this way and pushes your bolt backwards so it can cock itself again for your next round. Now this can be taken off by this little lever here. It's kind of usually pretty tight and takes either pliers or using the bolt of your AK when you tear it apart to open this. But this little deal comes off and this whole thing, and that's your gas blow back. And then moving up here, you have right here you have your bayonet lug, and so if you had a bayonet, you could slide it onto the top, and it would click into here, and then you have your knife protruding in front of your rifle. This little deal here, this little rod, this actually is a cleaning rod built into your rifle. So now you can screw on any kind of cleaning devices, or it has a hole through here. You can put your rag to clean your barrel. That's what this is for. Not all AKs have this anymore, but most do. And then you just slide it back into your rifle like this, and you're good to go. Moving on from there, you have your muzzle device. Now, the muzzle device is, whether it is your flash hider or compensator or maybe even a suppressor or something like that. These are all taken off, and they all have different purposes, and I'll do another video on the purposes of which one you might want to have for your use. But there's a little button on top of here, and you can press that, and once you press it, you can then unscrew your muzzle device all the way and put on whatever kind of muzzle device you would like. You can throw on AR-15 muzzle devices if it has this type of threading. And I'll go through threads and stuff like that in a different video for muzzle devices. But remember that this will have different threading than like an AR-15 will. Moving on from there, you have your front sight. Now this is an iron front sight, and it's your kind of a standard post. But what's interesting about this front sight is this is where you sight in your gun completely. That is your height and your windage. So there is a little bar that goes through your post here, and it will take actually a special AK-47 tool, and I'll put a picture of that up. But you use this tool to move this post left or right for your windage, and then there is a little hole in this tool that you can slide down over the top of your post and rotate it up or down for your height. So there's your front post, and we'll go into AK-47 sighting in and things like that in a different video, so be sure to catch that one when it comes out. Now moving back down here, you have your leaf spring back sight. Now it's kind of a standard back V sight. It's not a peep sight like an AR-15. It's kind of like most people that have ever dealt with hunting rifles will have a standard back V here, or a pistol. Now you'll notice that there is a double button on these and a bunch of numbers, and you can slide this up and down. What that is a distance regulator. So what you'll see maybe 1 up to 10 or up to 8 depending on your AK. And what that is for your actual distances. Now, be mindful of this. Most AKs do not go by yards, they go by meters. So remember, when it says 100 or 1 on this one, that stands for 100 meters, not 100 yards. So when you sight this in, you do want to sight it in for meters, because if you don't sight in for meters, the math won't be right, and they won't line up, and so it actually will be off all the time. So sight it in for meters, so that way it will go from 100 meters clear to 1,000 meters or to 800 meters depending on how your gun is. Now there's usually another setting at the very beginning with either a B or a P initial on it. That is your battle rifle setting. And typically that is the same height as your 300 meter rating, typically. So be mindful of that. And now on a AK-74, I believe it's your 400 meter setting. But on your AK-47 to 7.62 by 39, it would be your 300 meter setting. So be mindful when you're sighting it in to sight it in correctly, because if you don't, this is kind of worthless for you. And well, I mean, you have it, might as well know how to use it properly. Okay, so after we got done with our back sight, you'll notice there is a button on the back of your action here. and it's kind of strange. It doesn't really do anything, it doesn't seem like. Well, what that is you push it all the way in, you can actually pull this whole section off. That is just a dust cover. Just covers all the internals of your AK-47 from dust and debris. This actually can still be used completely fine without that dust cover. Now, I don't really recommend doing this because your gun's going to get extremely dirty, and you know, if anything ever goes wrong, which I don't think it would, but if it did, you're kind of exposed with your face there, and this doesn't make me feel real comfortable. So that is what this button is right here. That will take off your dust cover. It just comes off, and then, oops, comes off, and then goes right back on. Takes a little force sometimes, but what's great about the AK is they're built really loose and tougher than hell. That is one thing that is true about the AK, is they just don't seem to stop functioning. Now that is in combination with the 7.62 by 39 or the 5.45 by 39 ammunition. They the whole thing just built together, they just don't stop functioning. They're extremely reliable, whether it's cold, hot, dust, sand, rain, mud, doesn't matter. They do just keep functioning. Now, due to that, they are a little less accurate than what the American AR-15 or M14, M16, any of those would be like. And that has a lot to do with the ammunition, the manufacturer of the ammunition, the manufacturer of the AK. But don't get confused about this at all. AKs still are definitely accurate enough to do whatever you want to do with them. You're just probably not going to do same whole groups at all. Okay, moving on from there, you have your sling mounts here. Now, these are different than like a QD mount or quick detach mount for an AR-15. These are more like old hunting type sling mounts where they just click in on both sides here, and you have a full strap. And usually it would be a 2-point sling. Now, on the left hand side of your gun, you'll notice this large metal piece that is bolted to your gun. Now, not all AKs will have this piece, but most modern day AKs, especially American made AKs, will have this piece. Now what this piece is for is you can slide another aftermarket rail system onto this that actually bends around and puts a rail on top of your rifle. That way you can put now any kind of optic like a red dot sight or an EOTech, maybe even a scope on top of your rifle. Now you can also do a rail system on the bottom half of your furniture on the front hand, and they can do the same type of thing over here, where you can then put a red dot sight or light laser, all the above, just kind of like an AR-15. Now some will come with a rail already on top of it, and that, like on this dust cover though, because there is a rail on top, this does not get removed completely. It actually bends forward. And now because of that, you don't have your adjustable leaf backward V sight. You will have just a standard V sight, like a pistol. These are usually more on a pistol variant of your AK-47 or AK-74, like this one is. Now, the reason this is considered a pistol, and I will do other videos on barrel lengths and legalities and things like that, but this is under a 16-inch barrel of on an AK. So to be a rifle, it has to be 16 inches from the barrel, from the action, the whole barrel has to be 16 inches or greater. Anything under a 16-inch barrel is therefore considered a pistol or a SBR, a short-barreled rifle. Now, if you get an SBR, you have to get a tax stamp through the ATF, and it's an NFA item, and you have to do the background check and go through the ATF, pay your tax stamp, wait the allotted time, and hopefully you pass, and then you can get an SBR. As of right now, it is legal to do pistols with a brace like this. This is made so you can actually do it one-handed. It will strap around your arm. You can shoulder it here and there, which is fine. Now, if these do become illegal in the future, you will have to replace this and just keep a standard buffer tube on this type of variant without any kind of a brace or stock. As soon as you add a stock, it becomes illegal, or it becomes an SBR. So then you would have to go through the NF or the ATF to get one of these tax stamps. But as you can see, this does come with a rail that's on top of it. Now you can buy aftermarket rails that will go on top just like this, that might connect through your dust cover button and into your sight here. I will do videos on how to implement those and do different types of builds and things like this. And then last but not least, you have your stocks. Now your standard AK stock, like this, whether it be wood or a polymer. Then you can get into folding stocks, or like I just showed you, telescoping stocks like an AR-15 would have. There's underfolding stocks, metal. There's a lot of types of stocks that you can choose from, and either buy outright that comes with your rifle, or put them on aftermarket wise. Now the last thing that you would want to know for a terminology aspect is this: the stock, the pistol grip, the top, or your bottom of your foregrip, and the top of your blowback system. This is all considered furniture. So basically everything that's red right now, this is considered AK-47 furniture. And so you can buy furniture kits, or just different parts and piecemeal them together and make it kind of look however you want to make it look. And it's really not that difficult to do. Now there are some variants that, depending on your AK, that you have to watch out for putting on a stock, and we will get into that in another video. But whether it's a Russian type variant or a Chinese, that they do have different applications on how to put your stock onto your rifle. So we'll get into that in another video, but that pretty much sums up your functionality of your AK-47. And I will be doing an upcoming video on how to actually sight in your AR-15 or your AK-47, so do stay tuned for that. Well guys, I appreciate you joining me today, and hope you enjoyed all this. I hope you pulled some valuable information out of here. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see some upcoming videos, and I hope I see you next time. All right, bye.